This is the next flip. It's a 2005 1.2 Ford Fiesta, and it's in dire need of some mechanical and cosmetic TLC in order to turn it into a profit. Let's get straight to it. So finding this thing was like a goldmine, but it did have one major flaw, and that was the clutch. So I messaged her, arranged a viewing, and later that day I went and saw the car. But the main problem wasn't actually the clutch, it was the clutch release bearing. It had started squeaking and also felt rough whenever you put your foot on the clutch. So after some back and forth haggling, we shook hands at 250 quid and the car was mine. So I drove it back to the workshop where I was blissfully unaware that I was about to make the first major mistake of the project. Yep, that's right, I'd just given the roof a full fresh custom engraving, courtesy of the garage door. But there was nothing I could do about that. I only had the workshop for one day, so I just had to crack on. First of all, I take the engine cover off. Then remove the battery tray, the ECU and any loom in and around that area. The wheels come off, along with some boasting about my favourite tools. Oh yes, Ryobi supremacy. Then it was onto the drive shafts. Getting them out means taking the hub nut off and then taking the lower arm off by removing the pinch bolt, which I didn't film for some reason. But with that done, the drive shaft is now free. The other side is a bit different. The drive shaft is much longer, so it has these retaining bolts for a support bearing. These bolts, along with the support bearing, don't actually need removing, you just need to loosen them off a little bit. The housing for the support bearing is also just a great place to pry off, so taking this drive shaft out was pretty easy. However, the same can't be said for the other side. But with enough love and persuasion, it pops out. Next is the gear linkages, and after a few 10 mils and some clips, the casing pops off to reveal the mechanism. I really should have sprayed some lube over these to prevent any potential damage whilst taking them off. As a result of not doing so, these selector bushes are now absolutely buggered. Now after the linkages, I move over to the lambda sensor and disconnect the reverse light switch. After zip tying everything back, I also unplugged any loom I'd missed and disconnected the hydraulic clutch lines. Now it's just a case of prepping the engine bay, hopefully ready to take the gearbox out. At this point I'm taking out all the bell housing bolts except for one, that way I can keep the gearbox secure. And if you don't want to lose any bell housing bolts whilst you're doing this, always use the cardboard trick. The car goes up and with it I can remove any lower bell housing bolts that I've missed. By using transmission stands to support the weight of the gearbox, I can now begin to free the transmission from the car by removing the rear and top mounts. And at this point, the only thing keeping the engine and gearbox together are the dowels it sits on and friction itself. So you think it'd be pretty easy to take the gearbox off, but oh boy, you would be wrong. This thing wanted to fight me every step of the way. Wires and pipes were getting snagged, there was clearance issues, and then finally, I won the battle.
Is it really heavy?
Yeah. With the gearbox out of the way, I can finally attack the clutch, and more importantly, the release bearing. Removal and installation is easy, it's literally just 3 bolts. Also, fun fact, this release bearing is called a concentric slave cylinder, which basically means the clutch release bearing and the slave cylinder are all built into one unit. Now the pressure plate and clutch itself didn't actually need changing, but as the gearbox was off, you'd be a fool not to. With the bolts out and a little bit of persuasion from the pry bar, it comes out with ease. Once the clutch is aligned and the bolts are in and all torqued up to spec, the fun part can finally begin. Reinstalling the gearbox. First I tried putting it back on a transmission jack, but that just wasn't happening. It was a clunky process and I didn't have the right transmission stand for doing that. So I accepted my fate and started to manually wrestle the gearbox in. I ended up covered in gearbox oil, my arms felt like they were about to fall off, and doing my back in. All for the sake of a clutch. But the best part? My GoPro died so I couldn't even film it. So here's me doing the same thing in reverse.
Wow.
Oh, that's sweet.
With the gearbox back in, I can now put some bell housing bolts back in just to secure it to make sure it doesn't fall off. I took this bracket off to make moving the gearbox easier when I was installing it, but now I obviously have to put it back in. But not without removing it and reinstalling it several times first because I can't get the positioning right. And yeah, that was really annoying.
Right, this is.
Now with the gearbox secure, I can start putting the drive shafts back in. Getting the drive shaft slotted into the box and the other end into the wheel hub, that was pretty easy. But getting the lower control arm back into the hub, different story.
You can do it. You can literally get past that. So what's the f***ing problem?
But after a long battle, loads of lube and a lot of swearing, it finally goes in.
Oh, there we go.
I always use new hub nuts, especially on these Fiestas because they have the most annoying single-use hub nut design. With the drive shafts back in, I moved back over to the gearbox to fill it up with transmission oil. And at that point, I decided that I haven't got enough gearbox oil on me already.
Oh, f off. Yep. That's full.
The wheels go back on. After reinstalling the gear linkages, the car can finally go back on the ground. Moving over back into the engine bay, we've still got quite a lot of work to do. There's brackets to put back on, bell housing bolts to tighten up, wiring looms to reinstall, coolant lines to sort out, vacuum lines to put in place, and I had to bleed the hydraulic clutch lines and the slave cylinder. If there was any air in the system at all, it would render the clutch useless. After that, the battery goes in, along with any other odd jobs that I've missed, and then it's finally time to see if it still runs.
The clutch is in it and it runs. It's just smoking now. It is smoking though, but just because I've got some brake fluid on the manifold. Not a problem, that'll burn off. I'm just going to take it for a drive now and we'll see what happens. The clutch does feel ripe. Clutch works.
So with the mechanical drama over, it's finally time to address that faded paintwork on the front left wing and my new custom engraving on the roof. Now, the audio for this bit was horrible, so instead you've got a voiceover. Usually I wouldn't bother fixing paintwork like this. This time, however, is going to be a bit different. I've been gifted this. It's a Hichika paint gun. So the plan is to respray the roof and then hopefully save the front left wing with a lot of polish.
So yeah, let's get to it. So now that the car's had its wash and it is in the garage at last, what I'm going to be doing now is just sanding the entire roof ready for paint.
Now, prep is everything with paintwork. So I'm starting off here with the affected areas at 600 grit, and then at 800 grit over the entire roof, and then over to 1000 grit, and then a wet sand at 2000 and 3000. After that, I masked up the car ready for paintwork in the morning. You don't want to be spraying in the cold. The paint gets thicker, it doesn't flow as well, and it doesn't dry as well.
Right, we've got our back edge masked there. Everything is masked up, including the bonnet. This is covered up, my car's covered up. Let's start mixing paint.
So I'm starting off mixing the colour with a 1-to-1 ratio of colour to thinner. And make sure you wear a mask because this stuff really isn't good for your lungs. So I wanted to see how the paint gun would perform before I actually used it on the car itself. So I got this rear wing from a Range Rover Evoque at the local scrapyard. So this was actually my first time using a proper automotive paint. Before, I'd only used rattle cans with very limited success. So I was genuinely really excited to use this. Doing this also gave me a great chance to dial in the settings, as this thing has multiple flow rates and spray patterns. So the first coat was just getting used to the gun, how it sprayed, how close or far I should be, how it puts the paint down. And after the second coat on the test panel, I was finally feeling confident enough to crack on with the car. So here we go. The first coat went well. I was genuinely admiring my work until I stopped. I'd spotted my first cosmetic blunder.
You can really evidently see that. What I really should have done is sanded that a lot more, but it is what it is. I'm gonna wait 7 minutes and then go for the next coat.
I was feeling confident about the second coat, and just when I was about to start, yep, another problem. The best thing I could find to remove it was this plastic trim tool and a knife, knowing full well I'd probably just make it worse. Nonetheless, cracking on with a second coat of paint, everything was running smoothly, except from the influx of bugs. My guess is that they're probably just getting high off the solvents when they're flying and then crashing into the car. The second coat was done and 7 minutes went by.
Here we go, we're going for the third and final coat of paint.
Now that the third layer is done,
I've got to wait around 20 minutes, then prep the clear coat, then spray. I used way too much thinner to wash out the paint pot, which did leave me a little bit low for when I actually needed it for the clear coat mix, but that's a problem for later. Once again, after I mixed the clear coat, I moved over to the test panel just so I could see how the gun performed. Thankfully as well, there were no bugs at this point. I'm pretty sure just because I'd already killed them all and entombed them within the clear coat, but hey-oh.
Third and final, second coat.
I tried to overlap each spray by around 50% just so I could get an even coverage over the entire roof. But it was my first time and mistakes do happen, so I just opted for a very generous coat if I thought I missed any areas.
And that's all we got.
So with the car done, I drove it outside to let it dry in the sun, and honestly, the results? Look at it. I was dead chuffed. A result like this for a beginner, straight out of the gun, no wet sanding, no polishing, this was incredible. Inevitably with my generous coatings, there was some overspray in places, but this is all user error. Moving over to our test panel, which was completely unprepped and straight out the scrap bin. I mean, it's obviously not perfect, but it's unprepped scrap. I mean, look at it, it's incredible. What I really like about this is that it only cost me £80, and I would have easily spent that, if not more, on some high quality rattle cans trying to do the same job. But the difference between a rattle can and a spray gun is just night and day. So a huge thank you to High Chicker for sending me this to try out. Before moving on to the faded panel, I really wanted to sort these headlights out. They're faded and they make the car look neglected. Just look at them. You don't need power tools for this, but thankfully I'm lazy, so I've got them. I got to work at 360 grit and then working my way up to 400, 600, 800, 1000 and then a wet sand at 2000 and 3000. Give them a rinse and then move over to the polish. Again, you don't need power tools for this, but I'm lazy, so. And with the headlights back in, it is looking a hell of a lot better. Just look at the before and after. So now that the headlights are done, the roof's done, I'm really happy with the way the car's looking, except this faded paintwork. I started off again with the sander, but this time it was a wet sand at 1500, 2000 and 3000 grit. And then again using the polishing machine just to bring out that paintwork. And just like that, it was back together and looking fantastic. Sorting out the headlights, restoring the front wing and fixing the roof had completely transformed the look of the car. The next day comes and I clean the inside, getting it ready for the sale. And I was out and about later anyway, so I decided to use the car wash this time, which did cost me another £6, but it was a price I was willing to pay. It also meant that I was near an industrial estate, which was perfect as it was the weekend and it was quiet, making it an ideal place to take photos for the advert. It wasn't very picturesque, but it does the job. I take photos all over, including showing the main damage of the car, followed by a healthy, chunky description showing off all the good bits of the car. And with the advert posted, we wait. But it wasn't long until I had my first bit of interest, who inevitably was a time waster. But shortly afterwards, this bloke popped up. He seemed genuine, upfront and honest, so we arranged a viewing literally later that day, and after the unavoidable haggling, the car sold for a reasonable £1,000. Now, the cost breakdown. The car cost me £250, the clutch kit £64, insurance, tax and fuel ended up costing me £95, and the paint ended up costing me £80. With the addition of the car wash at £6, that puts my total expenditure at £495. And given the car sold for £1,000, that leaves me with a healthy profit of £505. If you've got any questions, I always reply to my comments, so let me know. If you've enjoyed this video, I've done loads of other flips on my channel, so check them out, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.